Well, he looks pretty serious.
Oh, it's like a
Yeah.
whole-
Oh, man.
All right. For everyone that would like to do the Pledge of Allegiance, let's go ahead and do that. Yeah.
Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a regular meeting of the Silverton Board of Trustees on September 12th, 2022. The time is 7:01 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Trustee Davis.
Here.
Trustee Baker.
Here.
Trustee Hartman.
Here.
Trustee Bureau.
Here.
Trustee George.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Here.
Affirmative.
Here.
All members in attendance.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And congratulations.
Congratulations. Yeah. Do we have any staff or board revisions to this evening's agenda?
Yeah, I had planned on giving an update on the 4th of July in my staff report, but given the comments that I have received today, I would like to request to add the 4th of July discussion to continued business 9A before DHM Kendall Master Plan update and discussion.
Great. Does that sound good, everybody?
Mhm.
Any other revisions?
That's all I have.
Any board revisions? As a point of clarification, we realized that we were thinking of asking for board revisions and they often never happen. The most common board revisions are consent agenda items, so that when we get to the consent agenda, the idea is that it's more or less procedural and there isn't any substance in there for discussion. So if there is, that would be an appropriate use of board revisions to the agenda, to pull something out of the consent agenda and put it on the main agenda. All right, so we will now go to public comment. We'll start with in-person comments and then move to Zoom comments. As you come up to the podium, if you have public comment, please introduce yourself and then you'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
Do you mind if I add something to that?
Yeah,
Can
please.
you also sign in as well, if you haven't signed in already? Thank you.
So do we have any in-person comments? Okay, so going to Zoom. Same for you guys, except for not signing in. If you could just introduce yourself and then we'll start a 3-minute timer.
There we go. Hello.
Hi.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Joyce Cohen, and I have been before you before, actually. I'm the one who presented to you on the puppy mills several weeks ago. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to join you at your last meeting when you discussed this. But I listened to it afterwards, and I think there's been a misunderstanding. I heard you guys talking about banning puppy mills in Silverton, and that's not what the request was. The request was to ban the sale of puppies and kittens in pet stores because pet stores buy from puppy mills. And I totally agree with you that the chance of there ever being a puppy mill in Silverton is almost zero. But the chance of there being a pet store is probably a little bit greater. And I know that this issue isn't urgent or a priority for you, but I'm kind of asking you guys to look at the big picture. I mean, other towns similarly situated to Silverton, small towns without pet stores like Alma, Fairplay, Minturn, have all kind of taken a stand on abuse of animals and said, hey, you know what? We're going to do whatever we can do to help this, and we're just going to pass this ordinance. It's very simple. It's a budget neutral ordinance. I'm actually going to send you a much simpler one than I had sent you before. As Clay said when I listened last time, that no one wants to see animals abused, and this is a way for you really to contribute to that cause on a grander scale, because as I said, the more towns that pass this ordinance, the greater chance we have of getting it passed at a statewide level. You know, it's kind of like just taking a moral and ethical stance against the abuse of animals, kind of like signing a petition. And, you know, I need to do this, but I ask you guys to think about your dog being kept in a cage its entire life, never getting out of the cage. I mean, it's just such a horrible thing to think about. So again, I know this isn't an urgent or priority, and we'd like to make it as simple as we can for you. I'm happy to work with Clay. I've worked with other city attorneys on getting this ordinance passed. I can provide any background information you'd like. I know you were concerned about legal research. I think there's someone else here that's going to talk about the kind of simplicity of this. So again, we're not asking you to ban puppy mills. It's the sale of puppies and kittens in pet stores. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, am I coming in on video?
We can hear you.
Okay, how about now? There we go.
There we go.
Okay, hi, my name is Larry Cohen. I'm from New Jersey. I'm actually Joyce's brother. The reason I'm speaking is because I've been working on these ordinances in New Jersey for the past several years in association with the Humane Society of the United States, which is the nation's largest, most effective animal welfare agencies. I wanted to put your minds at ease in terms of not thinking like we're asking you to do anything novel or radical. These ordinances have been around since 2006 when Albuquerque, New Mexico passed one. And there are now over 400 of them across the country in very small towns like yours, as well as in big cities like Reno, Nevada, Salt Lake City, Utah, San Antonio, and Houston, Texas. In fact, 6 states have made this state law. So it's really becoming a pretty common and accepted idea because the knowledge about puppy mills and how they sell to pet stores has become much more widespread and widely known, frankly. I also wanted to let you know that this particular ordinance was crafted by and reviewed by lawyers at the Humane Society. And of the 400 plus that have been passed, to my knowledge, it's only been challenged 7 times in federal court, once in state court. It has been upheld every single time, including in an appeal in Phoenix where the lower court ruling was affirmed unanimously. So this is not, you're not treading on dangerous legal ground when you take up something like this. It's very simple. It's very well accepted. And as Joyce said, I just wanted to reiterate, this is really more of a moral and ethical stance on your part, adding to the voices of all the other towns and cities across America and in states where we're trying to get more states to join the 6 that have made this a statewide ban. So I certainly hope that you will consider this and work with my sister and join the other towns in Colorado that have done this. Thanks very much.
Thank you. It doesn't look like we have any other public comment at this time, so we will go ahead and close public comment and move on to the next item on our agenda, which is new business item 4A, letter of support for Silverton Single Track Society, and update from Clem Branner.
And Clem Branner is here, there you are, is here to request a letter of support and update you all on your progress.
Cool. Before I get to the other stuff, I'm just going to give you guys just a quick history for the benefit of anyone that's not hip to everything we've been up to. We were founded in 2014 as a chapter of IMBA, and IMBA is the International Mountain Bicycling Association. I'll be saying IMBA a few times. So I just want to make sure to define that. And so for, I guess, about 4 years, we organized trail work days in different places: Rainbow Trail, Boulder Gulch, Bear Creek. We helped with the Kendall Trail and the New River Trail over there. And then in 2018, we went and talked to the county and asked them to help us get IMBA Trail Solutions, which is their trail building crew, to come here and do I guess what you'd call a feasibility study, which they did. And that was then what became the Baker's Park concept plan. That was in 2018. Then that big concept plan then became part of the Silverton Area Trails Plan and the travel management plan that BLM was working on at the same time. The Silverton Area Trails Plan was then unanimously adopted by both town and county in 2019. And then that then informed the BLM Travel Management Plan, which was adopted in 2020. At that point, it seemed like we had most of all of it all approved and everyone was in favor of it. So we got the IMBA guys to come here and start flagging phase 1. And then that was last summer. And then this year, BLM's, we call them the ologists, the biologists and archaeologists and whatever, they did the clearance, what they have to do to just make sure that everything's okay. So that was done this summer. We also needed an easement to go through a small corner of private property to make the climbing trail work. We got that as well this summer. We also met with the BLM and county at the trailhead about the parking area and the trailhead. Hopefully that will get going this fall. And early August, we had a Conservation Corps crew here, and they started clearing part of the trails for phase 1. Not clearing as in clearing the corridor, cutting down trees. So there was a chainsaw crew. They were here for 8 days. So that's kind of the quick history. And then now we're at the point where really the big hurdle is raising the funds to build it, which we want obviously professional trail builders to do. And to date, we have raised $190,000. Our GoFundMe online, it's up to 35,000. We've also had about 7,000 from individuals who didn't want to contribute through that system because they had other ways of doing it that they didn't want to go through that. So $42,000 total through GoFundMe through from 220 individuals. Yeah, so that's where the fundraising's at currently. Last year, we also applied for grants from Goco and CPW that we did not get. And that was because BLM and CPW kind of had a disagreement about what the trail closure should be like. BLM wanted seasonal closures and CPW wanted it to be hard. I'm sorry, not seasonal. They wanted conditions-based closures and CPW wanted hard dates. And in the end, BLM said, okay, that's fine. And they've now amended all their NEPA stuff. And we expect that that's going to be done, I think, by the end of this week. So that's the disagreement there has been resolved. We're going to reapply for both of those grants, and we're feeling hopeful that we will get them for next year. The other thing is that we've had now there's a lot of acronyms. IMBA has now been here and had more kind of boots on the ground and gotten more of their heads wrapped around what it's really going to take to build these trails. So we've gotten them to give us kind of a more hard cost on what it's going to be. And so the 1.5 million that we were initially thinking that it was going to be is probably going to be more like 2.5. inflation, more information, all that kind of stuff, you know, our cost of everything goes up. From you guys' point of view, it shouldn't really affect anything. It just means that we need to do more fundraising to get the money. So that's what we're working on. And we're applying for, we were invited already to apply for the Goco grant. We've already gone through the first part of it. They accepted what we did last year, so we just need to do the actual application. So we're going to apply for that one, CPW, and then there's also a state outdoor recreation office grant. And let's see, the Goco grant that got us the youth corps, we're going to reapply for that to get them here hopefully again, because there's plenty of trees to cut down. So what I'm here to ask you guys for is just the letter of support for these grants. Not asking for any money today, but probably be back at some point to ask for that. Yeah, that's all I got. You guys got any questions?
Do you have any sense on kind of timing, like how these grant cycles work and when, like timing of phase one or when you have enough money? It's just sequential.
Sure. That's actually the nice part of like that we were invited to apply earlier for the Goco grant. So we're going to be submitting that application, if all goes well, on Thursday, and we'll find out about it in December, which is earlier than last year, which helps because the trick is to get the trail builders lined up and they are all booked out far in advance. And we're already trying to get them kind of penciled in for us, but it's hard to get them to commit until we actually have the money and we know that it's going to happen. And in terms of just overall timing of the project, you know, we're looking to hopefully get phase one built next summer while we flag phase two. And then the following summer, the same program goes, and hopefully we'll have it done in 3 years.
Thanks.
Phase one is like 7 miles,
10.
10 miles of trail.
I'd like to say thank you to the Single Track Society for staying the course since 2014 on a project of this scale. It's cool to see people in the community taking something like this on and succeeding. Thanks.
That's a big task.
Yeah. Fortunately, I have a professional fundraiser I can lean on for that part of it. And she's put a lot of work into this. So.
We appreciate that too.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Clem.
Thanks.
And I think we need to direction or a motion to provide the letter of support.
It can just be direction. And then I wanted to bring up on organizations that we have supported financially in the past, if it would be okay to put their letters of support on the consent agenda. Would that be all right?
Yeah, if we're giving them funding, then we approve their project, so.
So no objections to letter support or to Gloria's.
Right.
Great. In that case, we'll move on to new business 4B, first reading of ordinance 2022-11, an ordinance revising municipal regulations concerning the lighting of Silverton.
So you'll be presenting an outdoor lighting ordinance that has been approved by the International Dark Sky Association. Cole Davenport is applying on Silverton's behalf to be a dark sky community. The main part of the designations application is adopting their outdoor lighting code. While we already referenced dark sky standards in our current code, this would define those dark sky standards for clarity and predictability. So while I stated in the memo that it's not a trustee goal, it could fall under the trustee goal, streamline, define, and refine policies, processes for clarity and predictability.
Let's check it in that.
Any questions or discussion on this item?
It's my understanding that this ordinance is not only in compliance with the dark sky association organization, but also like in line with and kind of typical of what other communities in our region have been doing?
Yeah, so this is based off the IDA's, our International Dark Sky Association's, model lighting ordinance. And then we took that to the Personal Ordinance Committee for comments on if we wanted to adjust certain things. And then we submitted it back to the IDA to see if that was in compliance with what they would approve for a dark sky community. And now it is in front of you all for the first reading.
I had a question for staff. For building and planning, do we have, or do staff feel equipped to incorporate this into our building plans, building review, permit sign off?
Yes, but then as far as enforcement goes, so incorporating this in is fine, but as far as enforcing it, we'll have about 3 years to really start, I guess, being able to identify our issues and solving them in those 3 years so that we can be in full compliance. And then it's great because this was brought to us from a community member. And that community member is our main point of contact for international dark sky communities. So he can kind of help rally people around and make sure that we are staying on task to be a dark sky community. It's the ideal situation. So it didn't come from staff, it didn't come from trustees, but it came from a community member.
Yeah. Great.
I noticed that in the enforcement category, it doesn't have a fine.
Yes, you're correct. Is that something you would like to add?
I don't know. It's just an observation. I think the enforcement is sort of, you don't receive a building permit, it creates some difficulties. I don't know if that's something that we wanted to consider. Or if we want, since you have 3 years to comply, it doesn't feel urgent, but just throwing it out there.
So let's play with like a extreme hypothetical scenario where someone puts up like a spotlight, like parties, like
Batman spotlight.
movie theater spotlight, like 3 times a week from 10 PM until 4 AM. Like what happens with that? How does that work?
I mean, we would kindly ask them not to do that. That's really our policy right now.
Okay. Is that standard for other, or can we find out if that's standard for other dark sky communities?
Yeah, we can find out.
So like if someone's like really abusing it, like do we lose the designation if we are non-compliant in a certain way or for a certain period of time? And we're unable to enforce compliance?
And I guess the other part of that is somewhat to Dana's point, in terms of capacity is like, this does become an additional layer of enforcement for our staff. And so there would be a cost associated with that, but I recognize that this is new and we're introducing it and we have somewhat of a grace period and we're working with citizens, and I don't necessarily recommend that we come out of the gate with big guns ablazing, but I don't know.
It's my understanding also that current code we're pretty closely in line with the dark sky
Already.
and so I don't think it's going to be that much of a shift. So yeah, hopefully it just won't be something that we need to enforce. And I think a lot like some of our other, like we were talking about rezoning and like, how will we find out, how will we enforce it? I think probably the community members will tell us if it's
very bright and obnoxious.
So
3 nights a week.
I think it'll be at least self-reporting. It's not self-enforcement, but.
I think I like that too. This feels like you get baby steps into this process and we're already very, very better toddlers or preschoolers. We're not babies in this because we're already pretty compliant. And so I like the idea of not having strict enforcement, but it seems like it's always something we can bring up again. If we say, hey, we're a dark sky community and we're hearing a lot from the community members that there's some really bright light somewhere in town, then it comes up.
Mhm.
It doesn't sound like there's any objection with someone making a motion to the first reading tonight, but we have a couple questions that over the next 3 years, we might want to.
Yeah.
And Mayor Furman, I wanted to just interject because this is good conversation. If you look to the administration and enforcement section of this code, it creates a general, it creates a general enforcement provision, which is that it is unlawful to violate any provision of this article and will be treated as a code enforcement issue. And we have those processes in place already. And so typically, if somebody was violating it, we would go through a code enforcement process, which, the best way to do is what you guys described, which is we would send notification of a violation, try to come to some sort of amicable agreement or outcome before we move on to the other more heavy-handed things like creating a summons for code enforcement violation and writing a ticket or a fine, and or if necessary, self-abating it, having the town abate the issue as a nuisance, and or at the very worst and most complicated, enjoining their action through a court of competent jurisdiction. So just so you're aware, there is actually fines and processes in place for enforcement. And so how that actually happens will be largely up to staff and town council. And so that's already in the ordinance and ready to go when you guys need it.
Perfect.
I think too, if we're asking for answers on some of these questions, like that could be pushed down after budget season, potentially for answers to those
Yeah.
questions. Unless someone had another priority.
I'll make a motion for ready. Motion to conduct the first reading for adoption of ordinance 2022-11, an ordinance revising municipal regulations concerning the lighting of Silverton.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Davis,
Yes.
trustee Kraniger,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Bierman,
Yes.
trustee Jordan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bowman,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. All right, new business item 4C is next.
We have a quote from John's lights.
I think he's just wanting
probably
to promote to panelists because this next item is consideration of plow blade financing to begin in 2022.
Thank you, Brian.
Cool. No, you're great.
And as John and I were discussing the budget, the opportunity to purchase new plow blades, that is hard to say, came to light in that discussion, and he found a creative solution.
Hi, John.
Hi, everyone. So we've been trying to find some plow blades for a while now. We noticed the last couple of years that they've been deteriorating a bit, and just trying to stretch them out. They're essentially steel. They've got some bushings and some cylinders, hydraulic cylinders on them. But last fall, when we were preparing for winter, we noticed that it's really time to, we can get through another winter, but it's time to come up with another solution for plow blades. And when I started shopping, I probably should have started shopping a bit earlier, because just like everything else, that type of equipment is not that easy to get a hold of. We've found some. We did price rehabilitation of our existing plow blades to the tune of up to $30,000 to replace or to rehabilitate those. So we found a brand new one and a very gently used one that I think it's going to come up to around 42,000 and change. The new blade is 0% financing. There will be 5.58, I believe, on the used one. The this is a purchase I recommend. If we get into a position in the middle of a winter, especially if we have a big winter and we have a plow blade that goes down and none are available, then that's going to significantly hamper our ability to keep the streets clear of snow. So I would present that to you. If you have any questions or comments, I'll field them now.
Did you do the math to see what that interest amounts to?
I believe Gloria was working on that. I don't want to throw her under the bus, but
I'm pretty sure, like, just in my head, it seems like it's about $2,000 a year, maybe less. But I just wanted to make sure that buying the new blade with 0% financing wasn't so close to buying the used blade at 5.58% financing that we should just buy 2 new blades. It seems like we're still saving quite a bit of money.
There's only one available though.
That was.
right.
Gotcha.
Right. Yeah. And it would be an option to purchase the used blade, but it would affect this year's budget pretty seriously. That's something that we could consider. I'm concerned that the blades may not be available that long. So I would recommend at the very least that we secure the blades and we would have the option to pay them off. We would have the option to pay off the used blade early if that's something that the board wants to do to save interest money.
And what I was looking into is if this started in December or in well, we were kind of thinking either November or December if our payment started, kind of what that might look like. And so with I think there's a fee in there as well, $400 to set it up for the financing. It would be like around $3,000 a month, probably, or $3,000 for the first month and then about $2,000 for the second month. So but typically we can, with purchases like this, we could defer those payments off to January. So I just kind of wanted to preface that we might spend some of that this month or this year, but we would ask them if we could start our payments in January.
John, I had a question. In your memo, it said to find other new blades, it could take up to 40 weeks to take delivery.
No.
Or-
Yes. So if we were to order a new blade today, if no blades were available, then the lead time is 40 weeks or more.
Okay. Yeah. So this is a good time to sort of jump on these and try and secure them before somebody else grabs them and we got to wait 40 weeks.
And they're holding them for us right now.
Oh, excellent.
Are we considering one blade or 2 blades? One new and one used?
One
Yeah.
new and one used.
Great, okay.
Those are the only plow blades that will work with our equipment in the state of Colorado right now.
Mhm.
I think this seems good. My only other question is, does the town have any other credit available at a lower interest rate that it could use to purchase it? I mean, 5.58 isn't like scary high, but it seems like, I mean, I know all interest rates are up around that now, but I was just wondering if we had any other type of credit facility that's maybe in like the 2-3% range, like we had access to in the past.
And this is directly through the
Yeah.
Manufacturer.
Yeah.
So I haven't looked at that because I was just assuming since it was directly through the manufacturer, we could look at that. But if you'd like, I could look into other alternate financing.
Yeah, I just didn't know if we had like a letter of credit with the bank existing, for general use.
Not at this time.
Okay. Okay.
I support this acquisition. Do we need to make a motion on this? I'd like to make a motion to for the plow blade financing. So I'd like to make a motion to buy 2 new, do you have it right there? Thank you. Make a motion to finance the plow blades through Cat Financial.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Davis. Yes. Trustee Kramer.
Yes.
Trustee Hartman.
Yes.
Trustee Garrett.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Kirby.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. All right, moving on to new business item 4D. Resolution 2022-17, a resolution providing that certain elected and or appointed officials of the town of Silverton shall be deemed not to be employees within the meaning of the workers' compensation laws.
So I would like to clarify in the memo that the deadlines are November 2022. I copy and pasted from last year's memo, since this resolution has to be made annually. And this is an opt-out of providing workmen's compensation to elected officials. I do want to state that there was an accident one time of an elected official falling down the stairs, and she was covered during that time under workman's comp. So wanted to preface that. I was given that.
Not
information
on the
today.
stairs tonight.
Do not fall down the stairs.
I do it tonight, just don't do it.
We opted out last year, so don't do it tonight either.
And I just wanted to make sure that I was reading it correctly, that we can opt out, but we must not receive any compensation for services. I mean, the community needs to know we get like $120 a month. It's pretty good for this gig. So does that have any?
So this is recommended by CIRSA. So CIRSA sends these out and asks if we would like our elected officials to opt out, and no, our compensation level does not meet what we consider compensation.
Shocking, but yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Great, thank you.
So if we can make a note for the memo for next year, rather than saying we must not receive any compensation, I think
Okay.
we should put the threshold in there.
Yeah.
I think because we do receive. compensation.
Right. Yes.
And I guess just confirming that that's the case.
Compensation above a certain, whatever that
Yeah.
number is.
We like to waive our right to compensate to workers' comp.
Motion to adopt resolution 2022-16. Resolution providing that certain elected and or appointed officials of the town of Silverton shall be deemed not to be employed within the meanings of the workers' compensation laws.
Second.
Trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Kramer.
Yes.
Trustee Hartman.
Yes.
Trustee Garrett. Yes. Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Kirby.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
I have an academic question for Clay, if everyone would mind humoring me, which is, if anyone had voted no, would that constitute a financial conflict since we're voting against something that's good for the town and benefits us in a financial way? And then how would that get decided if we're all conflicted out of something?
We're just keeping you sharp, Clayton.
I know,
You
I
don't have
love
to
it.
answer on the fly if you're not comfortable.
Well, I can find a more specific answer, but the more general answer is that a future possibility at some sort of like recovery cannot be quantified as a significant financial interest, just because it is an unknown. And so, you know, I think Mayor Furman, you understand this. Just that, you know, like from an attorney's perspective, there's no way to quantify a large financial interest in like an unknown, and that's just never how it's done. So from a conflict standpoint, I don't think so. For voting, and as you guys were joking, your compensation level is so small that if you were to be, you know, whatever injury or whatever that might occur, you know, you might get some medical bills paid for and your monthly $120 salary per month, you know, during that time. So it would be negligible. So I just don't see there as a major conflict, but I could dig deeper if you wanted.
No, thanks. I was just curious. All right. Thank you very much. Moving on to new business 4E, resolution 2022-18, resolution of the town of Silverton adopting a policy for certifying residential delinquency charges, assessments, or taxes to the San Juan County Treasurer.
And so this agenda item is about defining our policies for when an account is considered delinquent, when we contact that delinquent account, and what happens to that delinquent account. We have been practicing this in the past, but we didn't have like a resolution or a policy that backed that up. So this policy lays out after 10 months, the account would be considered delinquent and we'd be sent to the county for a property lien. Staff or for them to collect on that and then a property lien. And we already have a budget line item, treasurer fees in our current budget that accounts for this. So staff will attempt to contact the delinquent accounts in July and we'll work with the account holder to pay off their debt or establish a payment plan. And we are kind of doing this as another way to try and clean up our policies and help define things so that it's more clear for our community. And recover some of our delinquent accounts.
Yeah.
I was just curious for Matt, are you like, how many accounts are we talking about here?
Off the top of my head, I could probably think of at least 15 residential accounts and 2 business accounts.
Gotcha. And we've kind of been, what Lori said, we've been following this policy previously. We just didn't have a policy. This has been our approach.
Right, and this is just for residential accounts.
Yeah.
Because there's a limit in there, so we didn't think that limit would be applicable to businesses.
And there's a huge period of time for curing these things, right? Because it's 10 months before it gets escalated. And then once it goes to the county for tax lien sale, like that also, you can show up pretty much to the sale and cure the amount or sometime close to that.
Yes, and if the account holder, the initial contact to the account holder would happen in July. And they're reported for lien sale in late September. So that'd be a good 2 months of trying to contact the account holder, try to establish a payment plan before escalating it further up to the county.
And that's after several months of also trying to get in contact with them because they've been delinquent. Yeah.
And if there's any effort to set up a payment plan, that's considered sufficient effort, right? Like if you get any sort of work with people, then it's not like we're just sending people over to the county, like put a lien on their house, they're not paying.
Yeah, we're not trying to put liens on people's houses. We're just trying to give people as much chances is legally permissible.
To define our policy and what we do.
Yeah. Are there local or regional or statewide resources when we identify, like if someone responds, just says like, I don't have money, like can't even make a payment plan work. Like, are there resources that we can channel people to help them get back on track?
I don't know what the acronym stands for, but the LWHIP, it's with the Colorado Public Department of Health and Environment. I've had 2 account owners who had some issues financially that were able to work with that state department to have the state cover their bills and get them back on track.
Awesome.
So the state does have resources for getting people's water bills taken care of if they're in a financially bad situation.
Great.
Thank you. Any other questions or does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2022-18, a resolution of the town of Silverton adopting a policy for certifying residential delinquency charges, assessments, or taxes to the San Juan County Treasurer.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Davis. Yes. Trustee Kramer.
Yes.
Yes.
Trustee Bierman.
Yes.
Yes.
Chairperson Bond.
Yes.
Mayor Burger.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is approval of consent agenda items.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Kramer.
Yes.
Trustee Parker,
Yes.
Trustee Aaron,
Yes.
Trustee Stewart,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martin,
Yes.
Mayor Vernon.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. Now move on to staff reports.
Right, so good news, the master plan will be presented to the planning commission in a public hearing on September 20th at 5 p.m. at the courthouse. Citizens can voice their concerns on this public hearing and will be considered for adoption by the planning commission. It will then be considered by the board of trustees on September 26th, using the same resolution. I also wanted to point out that there's a resource X memo in staff reports. And after attending 2 of the trainings for the program, I realized that Resource X is not the tool we needed at the time. So we are not out any money. We have such a small budget that after seeing Resource X use the line items to convert to programs, I think we can do that internally. After seeing how they do their program, as well as we need more staff time to devote to actually organizing the budget at this time. So I felt like the hundreds of hours of training that I would need to do to facilitate this program could be better spent in me actually just getting my hands dirty and organizing the budget. So sorry about those expectations, but we are moving on.
And this was the program that we were going to get a deal on this year if we went, but not next year, but
Correct.
we
I'm
for all.
thinking overall, it's too big of a program for how small we are of a community. And the cohorts were also communities of 5,000, 6,000, and they were all based in the East Coast. So I didn't feel like I had anything in common with them either.
Sure. And we were concerned about bandwidth already, so it's excellent.
Yep.
When you say too big, like is made for larger populations or larger budgets?
Correct, like larger budgets. So more line items, more programs, and the way I saw the way they broke it down, I thought, well, we could do this ourselves.
So we're still going to move towards priority based.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And actually on, I'll be giving that update here in a little bit on the capital improvements for Open Town Hall. That's kind of our first step is getting citizen feedback on capital improvement projects. Todd has also included a memo describing the efforts being made to keep Kendall Lift operational. And a press release will be going out this week with operating information, season passes on sale, and kind of outlining expectations for the community. And then I have 2 requests. The first one is a work session for the budget on October 3rd. I think we had agreed upon when we first started as a board, the first Mondays of the month at 5 p.m. Is that still okay with you all? All right. And then the second one I need a work session on is for development policy review. So this is talking through our current issues with our codes, with our planning group CPS, and some ideas that we might have for stop gaps and fixes while we fix our codes, but what our policies will currently be. And that one, I didn't have a set date for. So originally I thought it could go with the budget one. But I think we'll probably have to do 2 separate ones because that's quite a long night for us. So I was asking if it could either be on, let's see, October 17th. I'm trying to do Mondays for you all, but if we want, we can do a different date.
Do we have a town meeting on the 10th that month?
We do, and on the 24th. Or we could put it before a meeting as well.
Is there a meeting on the 31st? That's Halloween.
There is not. I will be out of town.
Okay.
And it's Halloween.
It's Halloween.
And it's Silverton and
I don't think we want Halloween.
Or another option is like a Wednesday night. If that works for people, but I was just trying to find a good time. I can email out and get the dates if that works for you all.
Let's do emails and offering the 10th before the meeting, the 17th, and then, another Wednesday or another time that
Okay,
might be convenient for you.
can do.
And the 3rd is set.
And the third is Seth. And that is all I have on staff reports, unless you have any questions on what's in your packet.
I had one question. What does TAP stand for the Blair Street?
Transportation Alternatives Program.
Thank you. Yep.
I wanted to add to the staff reports, the sales tax update that was sent earlier or late last week. I'm looking at it so I could provide an update, or if you wanted to.
Yeah, so I think we're down 6.9%
9%.
from last year. So to date, we are about $300,000 over what we budgeted for sales tax.
I had that as a percentage. So for community members who are listening, we're up 32% in sales tax revenue year to date from 2019, which is our comparison year. So we budgeted to be 10% below 2019 and we're 32% above.
We're also $19,000 year to date over last year because the winter months were bigger than last year,
Right.
Cumulative.
even though the last couple of months in the summer have been down.
And inflation.
And that sales tax report will be on the next meeting. We just received it on Friday,
Got
so
it.
that's why I didn't get in the packet.
Any other trustee report, comment, question, feedback? Okay, awesome, thank you. Next item on our agenda is our committee reports, which is just the Facilities, Parks and Rec Committee meeting on August 31st. We talked about the DHM plan that's going to be the immediate or 2 items from now on the agenda. And then we also talked about the Kendall Mountain chairlift maintenance. And there is a memo that describes that in much more detail than I possibly could in the staff reports in the packet.
And it's been shortened for our press release, but
I did have a question for Todd, if you're there. I can see you're on there. I should have asked it in the staff report, but just thinking about the Kendall chairlift. I really liked all the detail and really appreciated all of this thoroughness. One question I had that had been brought up to me from community members that have worked on the chairlift before or managed it was the idea of a overall covering for the chairlift mechanism as something we could proactively do as part of protecting all of the parts and all the things to run. And I didn't see any mention of that in the memo. And I didn't know if it came up at all in any of your testing or conversations, or just if you have any thoughts or comments on whether we need something like that in the future.
Hey, good evening, everyone. So I was being upgraded to panelist during most of the question, but I think I caught the gist of it. You were inquiring as to like a covering, sort of like a barn at the top and bottom terminal. Is that correct?
Yeah, if that was ever brought up as needed, or if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so we have discussed that. I've had that thought quite a few times. I'm not sure without it being heated that there would be much benefit. I mean, we certainly see snow accumulation and stuff where we really get into issues is with the hydraulic portions just being exposed to temperature. Getting the lift going in the morning in particular is a challenge. A lot of times we actually hit it with like a heat gun to get it kind of thawed out and up to temperature before we can get the lift spinning. So certainly I think that would be worth looking into. Before we went any further, I would like to look into what the tramway board standards are for putting a structure over the chairlift. I assume there's some increased fire hazard there, stuff like that. So I would want to get clearance from the tramway board that we could proceed in building essentially an external structure around the lift. That being said, it is pretty common. I've certainly seen it in other areas, not so much in Colorado. A lot of lifts have like an upper compartment or an upper terminal where you're walking to do your maintenance. And in some cases, those are heated. Certainly worth pursuing. I'd be happy to get some more information there and get some clarity from the tramway board as far as what we may be able to put there, getting the assurances that essentially wrapping a structure around the existing lift is safe.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And Todd, if you were to reach out to the tramway board to ask them about, you know, what would be permissible, maybe if they also had a recommendation, like, you know, you can do this, but it's not going to do you any good, or you can do this and it would actually be helpful.
Sure. So the reasons it's kind of come to mind in the past, and we've thought about it a couple of times, really is for me, the temperature control, like even being able, if we could build a structure and keep it at like even 50 degrees, it would be significantly easier to kind of just get the lift going. And, you know, that being said, there's kind of some critical components that sit on the exterior of the lift, mainly the brittle bar circuit. It's mentioned in the report. Even some smaller housings that just go around those might be a good incremental step to see if we get that, because that's what we're really trying to protect. The rest of the lift is, you know, can be exposed to snow. It's really just those kind of more delicate systems where we'd really like to, you know, protect them a little better. And, you know, those are small areas. So my recommendation would be, you know, I'll certainly reach out to the tramway board and do the larger research, but in the short term, I think just building those little housings around some of that, some of those electronics might be immediately beneficial. And, you know, and if we have a really good response from that and we see increased reliability, then maybe we look at the bigger structure there. Because that certainly sounds like it would be a project for next summer.
Thanks, Todd. And so, and it looks like in the memo, we are proposing and planning on working on some of these housings for some of the more smaller, delicate mechanisms. That's already being talked about and planned for, right?
Yeah, we're already on it. We've got parts coming to build those there. It's not something readily available. It's not something. That being said, with the lift checking out really well across the board and the general chairlift health being good, we thought, you know, what else can we do? We say that every year and still somehow like run into some of these operational problems. So that was something more when we were talking with PAMA, that was a suggestion. And, you know, we're willing to try anything that's going to improve the reliability. So that seems like a really good incremental step, and that's already in motion among the other things I listed in that report. And, you know, none of that's required. None of that's necessarily typical, but we want to do everything we can. So we're going to try some new things.
That's great. Thanks. I really appreciate the level of detail in here.
Great. Thank you very much, Todd. I want to stick around for, we've got another topic coming up in a second. Anything else on facilities, Parks and Rec committee meeting? Okay. We will move on now to trustee reports. And a report. Okay. We will move on to continued visitors 9 new A, an update on the 4th of July budget discussion.
So after presenting the original budget to you all at the August 22nd meeting, staff has been working on ideas and collaborations to fund the fireworks. In a meeting with the fire department and the 4th of July Association, and this was in August, the 4th of July Association offered to pay for the labor costs of the fireworks proposal. So that's totaling $26,500 and the firing modular and igniters, leaving the town responsible for the remaining product materials cost of $34,000. We currently have $15,000 in the budget for fireworks in our 2022 budget. And the town would need to spend an additional $19,000 by October 1st this year to purchase the fireworks. If the 4th of July Association and we created a contract or something that would maybe give us a peace of mind that they could fundraise for that remaining amount. And I did send you all an additional memo this afternoon. And so my idea tonight was maybe if you all wanted to discuss it, because I know we've received a lot of email comments that I've been forwarding on to you, or if you wanted to give any additional staff direction of things that you might need to make a decision by September 26th.
One of the questions I had regarding the 4th of July committee paying for the additional labor was, because we also fund them, so will we be funding that labor as well, or because we give them X amount of dollars every year, and so it'll just come out of that, it won't, and they'll fundraise for the rest of it, or?
When you say them, are you talking about the fire department?
4th of July.
Oh, the 4th of July committee. So we budget for the 15,000,
Right.
which the 4th of July committee in the past has raised another 15,000 to make that 30,000 for the fireworks show. So we don't actually pay it to them unless they're just getting it all. Yeah, it's kind of like a match.
And that's always been, and that was one of my questions, that has that always been used, the 4th of July committee, they've always used that monies for the fireworks, or have they used it on other events that will then be canceled?
And that might be a great question for 4th of July.
Well, I was looking at our contract that we had with them that we kind of related to force majeure, let them out of the obligation this cycle. And from the way I read it, it wasn't that we paid the money necessarily for fireworks, but it was like, we have a contract with them and they were going to execute family-friendly events, manage camping, and manage the fireworks show with the volunteer fire department. And so it was like the $15,000 was for them to do that activities, those events. And so it was kind of up to them what they spend it on if they were executing those types of events or activities. But I don't know, Jim, you've been on it. Do you have any background history knowledge that you want?
I don't. My only comment is there's been a lot of disinformation going around town, and I have been inundated for the past 24 hours, and it's been very unfriendly, very unfortunate. And I would love this opportunity for all of us to have this conversation and clear it all up. So I think this is good. This is a good dialogue. We need this.
What is the misinformation you've been inundated by?
Dollar amounts.
I agree.
What's being actually proposed. I know that Molly Barella has been the go-to, and I want to keep it that way. So she needs to be the point of contact for that.
Should we invite Molly to the next meeting to help with that decision?
I think so. And I also, I know that there was a meeting with Nathan, and I know he's conferencing at the moment with Molly, Nathan, yourself, believe Jerry might.
Jerry.
And a lot of stuff was discussed at that meeting too, that maybe we weren't privy to. And I think some of that information, once that comes out, it might ease some of the tensions that are going on right now. So.
I'm happy to speak up because I suspect that I am the instigator of some of the conversation. And as I've said to the community and put out on social media, we were really looking for public input because what was presented to us as trustees was a budget that was, this is what the fireworks will cost next year. And we didn't have a commitment or contract with the 4th of July Association anymore. There was not that context or formal agreement anymore. And so the way I understood it from our meeting from August, at the end of August on the 22nd, was this is the new budget for the fireworks. And we were being asked to do a couple of things, approve the budget. And the cost of the fireworks had increased and the labor cost had increased, or to give staff direction on how to proceed. And the staff direction we gave that I remember was explore funding options and solicit public comment. And so I think we're getting a lot of that public comment on the budget that was presented at that meeting. And that was all that was presented to the public. We had no formal contract with anybody. And so it's great to hear that there's new renewed interest and excitement about the 4th of July Association. I mean, when we heard from Molly in May, there was nobody else. Molly and Jim can't do it all. And so there was talk about how we could revamp that group, support them, help them not have to fulfill these obligations in the contract because there were not enough people involved. And so that struck me as we kind of needed to rally support or community opinion on what we wanted to see from July and the activities. And it seemed like the model from everything I heard about how we managed it for the events, managing it kind of snowscape style where people could sign up and people could support it, but it wasn't on the 4th of July Association to execute all of the activities as it had been previously. That seemed to be very successful. I thought it was very important to hear community input on this change in the budget that was presented to us. And you know, just giving the context, it is one of our biggest kind of discretionary line items. If we change our budget on the fireworks, it is one of our biggest kind of discretionary line items that we spend money on. And I was hoping for community feedback and input from a variety of folks, or folks to step up and say, hey, we'd love to help volunteer. We'd love to help be a part of the 4th of July Association. So I was soliciting feedback, and I feel like that's what probably flooded everybody's inboxes. So that's what started it. But I think we've heard a lot of comments, and I guess my one question out to the community and or to trustees is, it would be really great if we could get a contract with the 4th of July Association for the execution of the fireworks show, if that's what they would like to propose. Just like we get a contract with the Creative District to execute so many Summer Sounds contracts, kind of sponsored by the town. And if we got that contract, that would be great. But I think it's still important for us, all of us, to understand that the town collectively, whether it's through the 4th of July Association or through the town funding at all, the town collective resources is still the number that we have out there, which is a significant increase from years past, than just the cost of the product and the cost it takes to put it on. And I want to make sure we're not talking here about who is most patriotic and who loves 4th of July the most and who loves fireworks the most. And we want to have unsafe fireworks and hurt our fire department. There is none of that. I just hope we can have a transparent discussion on what the fireworks could potentially cost, sources of funding, and is this the line item budgeting that the community would like? And I think that's what we talked about at our last meeting. That's what we asked for public input for. So that's my long spiel on why your email inbox has been flooded.
Thank you. I was confused. I learned about the 4th of July Association's interest or commitment to raise funds through someone sending me pictures of a Facebook message. Like when we met with the 4th of July Association before this 4th of July, it was like all of the burden was on a couple people. It was unsustainable. We agreed to end the contract. And the board has asked publicly at all the meetings for people to show support by volunteering, participating, however they can. And it sounds like, even though maybe not the way we wanted, there's now a spotlight on this and the community is going to show support for that. I think in a perfect world, at our last meeting, the 4th of July Association would have presented this idea, because I left the last meeting under the impression that we were being asked to fund the full amount and that the committee just didn't have the bandwidth to consider raising a bunch of additional funds. That wasn't something that we talked about. And we, again, at the last meeting, asked if the community could be made aware of this need and step up to help the committee have the bandwidth to take the 4th of July back on in some meaningful way. It's awesome that it is. it's too bad that it ended up in this little bit of turmoil, but I think we're going to end up in a really great place where, you know, the community is showing that support, and the 4th of July Association, I hope, will present us with a formal proposal. Because that will make our decision very different. Like if we're considering as a board whether or not the town's committing to funding $64,000 versus $34,000. Like that's a very different ask of us. And so it'd just be nice to know exactly, like, firmly what the town's being asked to do, because I'm still not quite sure how firm that commitment is. Because as Gloria said, the budget that we're looking at, we're talking about $34,000 is just an idea and a proposed one. We don't have really anything formal to vote on yet, but we're not supposed to. This is just an update discussion, and we'll have hopefully something formal at our next meeting so that we can make a decision in advance of the October deadline. And that's how I understand everything. If I'm missing anything, I'd love to be better informed. But that's how I understand it right now.
Yes, and so in full transparency, we met with the 4th of July committee as soon as this budget came out, with the fire department as well, and started brainstorming ideas. And then I went, wait, we need to ask the trustees direction first, and then we can present budget ideas to them. So that was the order of events, which I think should be the order of events for you all, so that I don't give you information that might be leading and then not fruitful.
Well, and I think too, when we're considering a lot of budget line items, we do have a formal proposal or a couple of bids or a couple of options. I've heard from a lot of community members that they'd love to see, you know, a couple of options for fireworks show. Like what we have is really spectacular. Everybody I've heard from has said, like, we do a really fantastic show and it's pretty well known. In this discussion, is there any room for talking about different options and a variety of timing or length? You know, I know for Snowscape, we did fireworks. That was a very small show, but those fireworks, we budgeted for $3,500. And obviously that's a big scale difference between what we might want to do for 4th of July and what we did for Snowscape. But what I heard from a lot of community members was, could we have some options here if we're talking about budgeting this? And I think as a trustee, if I'm thinking about how we budget for it, I would like small proposal. And these are a couple of different options of what we could get. Or we as a board can say, we can allocate this much amount and we want to contract, if it's with the 4th of July Association or the fire department, to execute this. I mean, again, I think Summer Sounds is a great example. We have a formal contract with the creative district. We give them X amount and then they commit to putting on 5 concerts. And it's up to them to decide what bands do they want to get and how big of a name do they want to have and how much they want to set up. But we say we can budget this amount, and it's then up to them to execute the event, how they want to allocate and fundraise for. And so again, back to our meeting, it felt like we were being asked to fund the entirety without a contract or a bid, with some options and some funding. But again, we may have been mistaken.
So I, in our last meeting, was also operating under the understanding that the 4th of July committee wasn't organized and contracted with the town in the way that it had been before. And so that, like, that level of partnership and support wasn't there the way it used to be. And so in thinking about this, I hadn't really been thinking of the 4th of July committee as an operating partner with the town. Sorry. And I wonder if, as we go forward, sorry, wrong tune. Like, do we need to re-enter? Come back to me. Sorry.
Are you raising your hand or just resting?
Oh, I'm just resting. I'm just trying to get right.
Do we need to re-enter a drop a new contract with the renewed interest? We're gonna have a clear direction. That's so nice. Thank
I
you.
think either way, we'll need to draft a new contract with the 4th of July committee because that contract expires on the 31st of December. So either way, we're gonna have to draft a new contract.
Okay.
That's it. If we have direction in terms of like additional questions or things, I think we should now organize them, but in terms of like coming up with anything substantive, we have 2 of the 3 important parties here, if Molly's the primary spokesperson for the association. So I think we should wait till Molly's present to like try and come up with something, or, part of our direction could be asking the 4th of July Association to present something at the next meeting. Or perhaps like, I guess it just has to be the next meeting as we have a special meeting. But that timing's tight because that'll be a take it or leave it moment.
But I guess again, is there options where different vendors could be contacted, or we could, again, I just think this is not an insignificant amount. And if that's how the community we want to spend our money, that's great. And I've heard some really great things about it. I've heard also other perspectives, but I'm seeking more information. Do we have different timeframes? Do we have different bids? Do we have different options? From both our fire department and our 4th of July Association, if they're wanting to help be a partner in this.
There's a current dialogue, correct, Gloria?
What's that?
And y'all have had meetings, correct?
Yes, I had a meeting.
So there's been dialogue, there's been discussion about possible go forward plans and stuff like that. We just don't have all that information, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yep, so this is an update of kind of where we're at the date.
Okay, so I think another question maybe to help us work this out would be to find out what other towns in that are similar, have a similar budget size or similar firework program. How do they fund them? Their budget look like? Do they have a structure that, I think I even brought this up in the last meeting, that potentially leads to a greater sustainability of how it works.
Well, and I guess also if previously with the 4th of July committee, which I thought that the meeting in May had sort of temporarily at least expanded it. And then I was not able to make the last meeting due to some personal issues, but if we re-enter into a contract with them, is there going to be a match requirement, or like there's just a bunch of different questions that I would also like answered before signing off on that amount of money. So I did receive numerous emails on this from people both for and against. And I would say the one resounding sentiment in every email was that there's just unified support for the fire department and all that the volunteers do. They just have differing opinions on how much they want to spend on the fireworks. But yeah, every email I got was in support of our fire department. They're just, some are more worried about the price. So.
Gary, is there anything you'd like to add to the conversation? Okay.
And what I presented was there's a order bid to show. As I said last time, I don't know if, I'm the new guy, I really don't have a say in this. Other than, some of these guys have been doing this for years. They've worked really hard to bring this show to where it is. And to ask them to, cut their show in half, are we gonna, I think it's probably a non-starter. Just my opinion. We do have a monthly member meeting tomorrow. I'll be bringing it up then if there's leeway, as far as smaller show, any other kind of bid we can put in. But direction I've been given is this is not. If we're looking for other bids, it probably has to be from outside.
Okay, and also Jerry, since you're here, how hard is the October 1st deadline? It feels like we're getting a little bit pinched and rushed.
It's a hard line. They originally gave us a September 1st deadline. We were able to negotiate.
It's already been, okay.
This is to get the 10% discount.
No, that was to ensure the product.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. There is such a shortage and, supply chain issues, they can't guarantee we'll have the product. It wasn't the discount.
And looking into it, you had asked about alternative programs. Durango spent 32,000 on their drone show.
Mhm.
And the majority of comments were it was a dud.
Mhm.
So
Well, I think the other challenge with allocating funding for fireworks, which is what it is in October 1st, and the show happens in July, and I think we ran up against this, Jerry spoke to it in the last meeting, is like, if you were asking for money to like have a big water fight and a giant potluck and 15 kegs of beer or something, that would be like, the fireworks expire. And I think it's so tricky because of the fire danger. And we have some years where we can light them off and some years where we don't, and we get really close to these deadlines. And so I think as we look, that's just an element in this decision that is typically not present in.
we have up to 3 years, correct? There's an expiration date, 36 months. Okay.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, because it's hard. The risk of investing, $34,000 in something that doesn't get to be enjoyed and utilized, it's a high risk investment, which again, if that's how the town wants to spend money, that's one thing, but potentially looking at the scale and scope of the show can reduce the risk of, that level of funding.
I have a question. So the 15,000 the town is traditionally allocated for the 4th of July. On years there's no show, where does that 15,000 go? Does it stay in that line item and build, or is it just absorbed back into general?
It's absorbed back into general fund. Yeah, we can't make multi-year commitments with the line item. I know.
Has there been a year where we didn't have fireworks, but we still didn't absorb that back because we had the events at the park, et cetera? Or has that always gone to the fireworks show?
Know the answer to that one.
Okay.
I can look into that.
we covered a lot of stuff. I'm trying to think through a recap, so. Hopefully it's now clarified that there's an interest in the 4th of July Association funding a huge part of the budget. There's still a more than double budget increase request. The trustees have asked whether or not it's feasible to alter the show in some way to reduce the cost. Sally asked if we can have any comp information for other communities. It was asked that the 4th of July Association present something more formal in terms of like a renewal of the current contract with just descriptions of what they're committing to, so that we can decide whether or not the real commitment by the town is the full budget or a partial budget.
I think too, related to that summary is if the 4th of July Association is able and willing to raise the $25,000 for the labor to execute the show, does that mean that they won't fundraise any further to support some of the additional events like they've done in the past? So will their main budget be going towards the fireworks show? Because in the past, we gave $50,000 for fireworks. They paid for remaining part of fireworks and they executed several of these events. But again, with limited folks to do this stuff, I think it'd be helpful to just clarify what can we expect from the 4th of July Association for the fireworks and for the event? And then recognizing what it might look like with staff time or other volunteers to do other stuff. Because I know they tried to raise money and paid for the bouncy houses and did a whole bunch of other stuff. So just being clear about, we're talking about the fireworks, but we're also talking about the execution of 4th of July overall as the event.
Are any of these questions, these are good questions, but have any of them been answered in the discussion that you, Nathan, Molly and Jerry had?
I don't think so.
I feel like the 4th of July Association verbally has committed to handling this, but like, I mean, we're in the same boat as you. We're not gonna go forward without just hoping that they can raise the money. You know, so I think there was a lot of brainstorming, a lot of great ideas that came out of it. You know, as far as the partnership between the town and the association, verbally, I think it was agreed to, but yeah, without a contract, I think that's.
And will the fire department have a contract between the 4th of July Association or the town of Silverton?
I guess my point in asking that question, Gloria, is I don't know the particulars of that conversation, and maybe that could help clear up a lot of this and answer some of these questions. So when we go back out into the community, we'll have better responses to some of these questions.
Well, and I would argue that that's a proposal down, like there are no, like, we don't even have a contract with 4th of July Association anymore. So, I mean, those were preliminary discussions. I know that Nathan and Molly, and I think you met at one point, or the 4th of July Association met after that. But I'm not sure. And unfortunately, we have a huge gap here because Nathan is kind of our keystone in this.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate that he had a medical emergency. So we're kind of fumbling through this. I don't have all of the background information on the 4th of July and how it's been facilitated in the past. But I think requesting Molly to attend the next meeting and probably with a proposal that might help clear some of this up.
I mean, it doesn't have to, Molly would be awesome, but anyone from the committee that's able and authorized to speak on their behalf is fine.
Or that attends meetings.
Right, yeah.
It's not just a big wallet.
So something, I'm just trying to anticipate.
Big wallets.
I guess, and my point again is I want to try to head some of this off so that I don't like what I received. And the comments that I received, I'm sure you didn't like what you received. So I think that we can change this dialogue in a positive direction if we had more information, not jump the gun or put out information that may not be what was actually discussed.
And what
I wasn't there, so I have no idea what was discussed in any of these conversations.
And that's where some of the documentation could help.
Of course.
When we have the contracts and.
Yeah.
Or proposal.
I think we're all looking to bring
Or a proposal.
transparency and accountability, and we're all operating from, we got a proposed budget from the fire department. That was the only thing we really had to go off of that was formal. And that was the request made to us. And it's still, what I'm going to emphasize is that is still the request out there for the community to support or not support or discuss. And we don't have a contract for executing anything else or a contract for purchasing anything else. And I feel uncomfortable appropriating funds for an October deadline that is for a pretty significant amount of product without a contract for execution or a contract for fundraising or what it all looks like. And I guess I felt concerned, again, because my understanding from our meetings in May and our meeting in October with the 4th of July Association, or in August, was, poor Molly and Jim are the ones left standing, and that we really needed to rally community support and we weren't hearing community support. So we were sort of stuck there where it sounded like it was landing in the town's lap with this proposed budget.
So circling back to board direction, in addition to things that I mentioned before, it sounds like if we want to try and get something done at the next meeting in time for the October 1st deadline, we also are looking for a formal proposal and contract with the 4th of July Association to be proposed, as well as understanding how the fire department weaves in, whether that's a contractual agreement with the town or with the 4th of July Association. So that everybody knows exactly what the expectations are. And then I'm going to add one that I've been thinking about, which is if it comes to pass that those funds are not raised, does that mean the fire department will step up and volunteer their time again? Or will the town be on the hook for the difference? Or if there's any delta in the target of fundraising, just what happens?
I mean, I can't answer that like one of the members.
For sure.
The direction that I was given, this is where we're at.
Right.
It's too much of an ask.
Totally.
So that's where these dollar amounts came from.
Yeah.
That's the direction I've given right now. I think maybe with more discussion from the July Association, that might become a little more clear.
And I totally get that. I'm just, in order for us to, I think, make a decision, we would just want to know what's the contingency plan if funds aren't raised to the total budget. So I guess that's everything I've got so far. Is there anything missing that we would want to know in order to make a decision at the next meeting?
The only other thing I would add is this has been added to the list of items that people can comment on at the open house.
Yes.
So I think that feedback is going to be great. Hopefully we get a lot of folks that.
And they can also comment not just at the open house, but from the 15th to the day of the meeting. So that would be the 26th, anytime in that time frame during regular office hours.
Yeah, or at the open house.
Or at the open.
And the supplemental that you provided to us this evening, has that been sent out?
No, not yet. No, but would you like me to add that to the agenda packet?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, any information to give and provide, I think would be fantastic. Thank you, Gloria.
I don't know if you guys see us like twitching and stuff. There seems to be some type of like gnat infestation and like bug
Everywhere.
It's weird.
Following international dark sky rules and regulations. Do you not have this problem?
Yeah, I think that was right too.
So I guess like just to be nuts and bolts, like, can we expect to be put on our plate a $19,000 increase in the budget in order for us to have 4th of July celebrations next week or the next meeting? Is that gonna is it gonna again come down to, we need this money and we need it by this date? Like, it's like, just another time crunch.
I'm going to jump in and just on Gloria's behalf say, I don't think we can't predict what the 4th of July Association will propose, and it's up to them to come to us.
Or the fire department, they're having.
I guess I'm just looking at like the information we were given here. And just like with this deadline and stuff, it's just to be prepared for.
And so that's kind of a draft budget on some concepts that have been thrown out, but yes, that would be a possibility. And other things we have looked at is camping to possibly raise those funds. So we looked at previous years, and I think Nathan and Molly have been working together on looking at that. So I think really talking to them about the camping aspect.
I guess, but like listening to, Jerry kind of says like, this is the proposed budget. This is what the fire department is presenting us. There isn't an opportunity to go lower. And so it's just kind of like, I'm black and white. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like no fluff. 19,000, like, do we support it or not support it? And so I'm just
19,000 additional.
So 34,000 total. Like,
Yeah.
Like just to, yeah.
But again, recognizing that if the 4th of July Association is committing the 25,000 to the fireworks, the cost to the community is still this total budget of 63 or whatever. Like that's the thing I think that still can get lost in the conversation, is that if the 4th of July is raising the money for the fireworks, that means that in different to years past, they're not executing the other events that they've executed or raised money for.
Well, we don't know that.
Well, but that, yeah,
We just don't know.
it's true.
And then they've offered to pay for the labor costs in this instance.
So essentially the town would just be paying for the product,
Correct.
32,000, 34,000 product. So, okay, I guess I keep hearing this 60 some odd thousand. I'm trying to better understand.
And that was the total budget.
That's what the fire department asked us.
Right, but if this other entity is committing to X, then the town is responsible for Y, and Y equals 34,000. So it's not really 60 something, it's 34 that the town has to come up with.
It's 60 something if the 4th of July committee is willing to come and propose that to us, but
Which
so
hasn't
far
been
we
proposed
haven't
yet.
had that.
And I guess, but I'm just going off the supplemental that I was provided. I have not been privy to these meetings. I have not spoken to anybody. I don't go on social media, not that, I just don't. I got enough brain damage. I don't need that. So, I hear these things. I'm trying to better understand myself. So this is perfect. Thank you.
So I guess kind of another question for next time would be, can the town afford 34? Like, at what point does, what would you're managing our budget, the finance committee meets. This is not a budgeted item currently. And so if we were examining any additional, from any entity and on any snow blades or anything, we would have to look at the budget and say, how does this fit in our budget? And is this affordable or not affordable? And so I guess that would be the bottom line is, how does this additional request fit into the greater context of our current budget?
Oh, that's a great question. And do we need to have? Do we need to schedule a financial committee meeting?
We have one next Monday.
Is that soon enough?
That's the 19th.
Sounds soon enough.
I have it
AM, isn't it?
pretty full, so this.
Yes, it is.
A blip on the radar because
See?
we've been talking about the entire budget.
Right.
Just add it to the list.
Yep. I've got a full page of notes here.
Crazy.
I got stung by a bee today. I am feeling very cautious about bugs.
I definitely agree with Jim, though, that that's like just this firework item list in your budget and that supplemental, along with what we've committed with the additional commitment of the town, like really helps spell it out. And so that needs to be, viewed.
So for community members to know, that will be added to the packet and folks can find that on the Google Drive for today's meeting packet.
Yeah. I have to look to Matt because Matt does it.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt.
As he wipes his brow.
Yeah.
Is there any other direction that would be helpful? Is that sufficiently overwhelming?
I think I'm overly directed.
Okay. Trustees, we're good on this topic for this evening?
I was to say probably not, but
Oh, yeah. Like we're,
yeah, we can move forward.
let's move forward.
I think we know where we're going and what we need.
Okay. Last call. Okay. Moving on to original 9A, continued business, Kendall Master Plan, next steps.
All right, Todd and the Facilities, Parks and Recreation Committee have been working with BHM to facilitate a Kendall master plan. In this memo, it outlines that staff is looking for board direction on the preferred method of community engagement for this plan, feedback on the updated renderings in your packet, and any other direction that the trustees would like to provide to continue this Kendall master planning process. I want to be clear that this master plan is for Kendall Mountain. This isn't our full master plan. We talk about it in different ways, but this is just for Kendall Mountain. And what the DHM has used to date is our previous engagement that we've had with the community in order to shape what you see before you, the renderings today. Todd, did you have anything to add to that?
No, that was an excellent introduction.
So at the committee meeting, DHM presented these 3 renderings to the Parks and Rec Committee, and kind of our discussion centered around how confident we were in understanding what the community's vision was for Kendall. And based on all of the past information and visioning and workshops, we felt like this was the furthest we could get it without now going back to the community to host charrettes around these renderings, so that community members could sit around these maps saying like, oh, I thought it would also include this, or whoa, I didn't think this would be there, or, you know, I want 3 ice skating rinks, not 1, or, you know, or this doesn't look like enough parking, or whatever it is. But at this point, like, we've kind of taken all of the information, or DHM has taken all of the information provided through all of the past Kendall discussions, and it's culminated in this. And now it seems like a good place, now that we have a visual, tangible thing, to now get specific direction about what exactly the community wants the board and the town to pursue. And we didn't feel like we could anticipate further the community's desires. And so it's suggested that we bring this to the board to see what the board thought about that, given the board's context, and whether the board was interested in supporting the direction to now go back to the community to host charrettes or something else, and what that format should look like.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Okay, so we have 3 renderings in front of us. Is one just a zoomed in version of the other? Okay, just.
Okay, maybe Todd, do you want to kind of just walk through what the 3 renderings are?
Sure, I'm like going back and forth. Okay,
Yeah.
let's spot the difference.
Sure. So I've got the 3 in front of me. They do vary mildly. You know, if you look at the first rendering, which I would call rendering A, you'll see a boardwalk in kind of an octagon shape towards the north. You know, there's also a wedding venue out there. These are 3 different renderings.
Okay.
Very, very similar though.
But the zoomed in version on number B, I think it is, that is considered like a different rendering than version A.
I believe that's correct. It's almost like doing a spot the differences. I apologize if it's not incredibly clear.
And that would be good feedback though for
DHM.
Yeah, so I think too, having this be really focused on the process on moving forward with the community, and not so much the asset identification, because I feel like we could get really stuck there as a committee, and then just, or as a board, and just really focused on kind of the process you want to see with the community, so we can give clear direction to DHM.
Thank you, that's helpful.
The only super obvious difference between them is that the 3rd rendering maintains the existing structure as is, and the other 1 or 2, depending on whether that's a zoom in or not. The committee was presented with 3 independent renderings.
Okay.
I'm not sure if these 3 that are in here are actually separate, but one current structure, other one new structures. But most importantly, it's, you know, is it appropriate now to have DHM present to the board and the board to give further direction and iterate these further, or is it time to have DHM facilitate, or have DHM at least present at a facilitated series of workshops with the community where they can say, like, here's the priorities we extracted from all of the community visioning that's happened. Here's how we reflected this here. What do you guys think? What do you want to do differently? But it doesn't seem like we have enough information to take this further.
I think we should probably take it back to the community to get their input. That's always, I feel like that's the best idea, to make sure that we're even on the right track, instead of having DHM come and present to us again and we get down a rabbit hole and then people are just like, oh, no, we don't want any of that.
I mean, it seems like way back when it was kind of talked about the revisioning of the kind of master planning process, the idea was, let's get some pictures out there again of actual things that people could react to. So it feels like this got us there. Yeah, it feels like it got us there. I liked the question on kind of, I think how they facilitate it will be helpful to know. And I wonder if there's options for Clark from Community Builders to engage at all, because he has trust with the community. He led a really successful process. So if there's any way for him to, I don't know what that looks like. You guys that are on the Parks and Rec committee can figure it out, but just that'd be my one question is, could we engage Clark or Community Builders in some way to support DHM or give something to DHM? And a question for DHM and Clark would be, how would you solicit community feedback on the potential for down the road ski expansion? Because it's, you know, these renderings are here, but how do they solicit that feedback in the process?
And labeling the maps A, B, C.
And maybe like a cheat sheet of what's different in each one on the side.
And I'm sure they can manage a great process of stickers and rating and check marks and what do you like, check this, or whatever, but yeah, if Community Builders could somehow.
At the committee meeting, our best case scenario was that Clark had interest in facilitating this, where DHM could present, Clark could facilitate, and then kind of give DHM like a package of, here's what the community said, so that DHM can just focus on executing direction as opposed to having to also be a master of facilitating public engagement. But this is also broader than that if you guys would like it to be. So if anyone has other feedback or wants to take this a different direction or anything, this is a moment for us to check in.
Yeah. Is there any benefit to adding budgets and timelines to renderings? Even when the timelines are so grand and far in the future? I mean, even some of this feedback I received recently, even about like some of the other stuff we've done over there has been like this idea that we were gonna like pop it up in a year. And that was fearful. And it's just like, I think even for all these renderings, just to show that it's like, these are all very, very far in the future.
I think that might be a little bit of, I think potentially that would be what DHM wants us to identify in that touch point process. Because what they're seeking is, you know, of these things, how do you prioritize them? What, you know, what would you put first? Where do you start? Do you start over with an ice rink? Do you start with trails? And so it almost is like a little bit of a chicken egg situation. Like, well, if you're doing this first, I support that one. If you're doing that first, I support this one. And if that costs that much, then I want to do that one. So I think that is part of, you know, this engagement process. I'm just not sure if we went back to DHM and asked them to work out some of those details, if they would say how, you know, if they would sort of want to punt it back to us and say, well, we don't know, what's your priority?
So the caveat to that is one of the foundational guidelines the committee asked DHM to consider is that all of these plans were proposed in such a way that they could be phased out. That they're not presenting us with something where it's like, you have to do the whole thing at once or it's not going to work. And I'm not sure, I think it would be a good question to be like, how would you do this in phases? What would be the most logical phases from a construction planning and design perspective? And we don't.
Conceptual.
Yeah, these are just conceptual.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
It's like when the community says we want an ice skating rink, an expanded music venue, better parking, but still a connection with, you know, the ski area and other things to be able to tailgate and social space and storage facility and access for
Bridges over the rivers.
Yeah, and better walking paths. This is a version of what it would look like so that people know that we're not talking about like
Measuring
development, right? Totally.
And I guess that's why when we had that meeting, we came to this conclusion that this is the touch point to come to the community. But I mean, I hear your point, Jeff, like it's tricky to look at it and say, one versus the other without additional information, but I think what we're going for here is enough of a bookend or enough of a concept to get
The conversation.
valuable and helpful input. That's what this has to achieve.
Well, maybe some of that could happen in the facilitation process in the same way we're doing with the budget prioritization process. It's like people can spend it this year, next year, and 2 years, what's important to you in what order. And if Clark's a great facilitator, DHM has done all this stuff before, if they're able to maybe that's a point of feedback to them is as you facilitate this community input, can you, as part of your facilitation process, judge people's prioritization?
Right. We should try to get that. Yeah. As part of the input.
Yeah, Todd.
Those were all great comments. So I think part of the reason, I would recommend that we engage the community is once we know priority, scope, and scale, we can start to have a consensus of vision. And once we have a consensus of vision, we can really start looking at price and phasing. It's difficult to phase projects when you don't know the scale. And when you don't know the scale, it's difficult to determine a price. So that's kind of the tricky thing about master planning is there's certain things you need to know to make informed decisions. And sometimes you don't get that information while you're planning. So doing this check-in with the community and with the board is really intended to start honing in on that priority, scope, and scale. It can be even difficult to prioritize something like an ice rink when for the community, when they don't know what kind of ice rink they're talking about and how big the development is. So we kind of need to start broad with like the concept of an ice rink, the concept of cross-country skiing, the concept of a river corridor, and see where the general priority is, and then really start kind of honing in from there. But that consensus of vision, it really kind of feels like the holdup right now. And once we can get that, we're able to run with it and really get a lot more information, and we can hit the ground running really quickly. So it's almost like these initial phases are really the difficult ones. But I kind of just wanted to stress that, this board and staff and the community, once they're all aligned on, a consensus of vision, this can actually move rather quickly. And then we can really get some quality renderings of individual assets out to the community and to the board and get into those pricing and that phasing. But we kind of need to know what we're doing in those regards. So something as simple as saying a small ice rink or a large ice rink and getting that community feedback would be really helpful at this stage.
Thank you, Todd. I think zooming out real quick too, a point of clarification that we kind of stumbled upon because of the overall town master planning process is that this is a Kendall master plan, not a development plan. And so the idea is to give us guidelines and scope for the town to then aim to achieve. But this isn't like construction plans. These aren't construction documents that it's like, as soon as we check in with the community, they're going to say, oh, this is great, check, fundraise, build, done. Like that's not what's happening. This is a vision document so that the town has direction going forward about like, as grants become available and we have bandwidth, like what we can pursue there.
We drew kind of a parallel to the wayfinding plan.
Right.
Like in the way that the wayfinding plan was written many years ago. I don't think any of it's been implemented yet, but when we were ready to take a look at the signage at the front of town, we were able to pull it off the shelf, open it up. It doesn't have the construction documents or the pricing or the contractor bid or anything for the sign, but we had 2 renderings and we were able to kind of zoom in on that in a more efficient way as the community was ready and able to take that project on. I think that is potentially, how we could see this visioning process working.
I really like Todd's framing of consensus of vision. this is conceptual and we're going for consensus of vision. And that seems really nice to have something actual to react to as opposed to made up things in the world that people want to react to. And so that seems really helpful.
But I guess with that consensus of vision, using Todd's, like the great example of an ice rink, a refrigerated Olympic sized rink and a covered pond would both be considered an ice rink. And so getting that very specific vision of like what we are looking for, because it leads to a lot of, I'm looking for an ice rink. Well, we need to get players from Durango to come up every week, like to facilitate it, because it's like the vision that they see is different than what we're actually proposing. So not to put budget constraints on it or time constraints, but just like Todd was saying, scope.
Right.
Large, small.
Yeah.
Being descriptive.
I think that was like, again, it goes down to the facilitation. If I think about the community builders process and, you know, the community saying we need housing. Well, housing is a very big term. And so they actually had posters of like, what type of housing, scope and scale of housing. And the town really likes tiny homes and the community really doesn't want McMansions. That's helpful feedback and we can move forward with that. And so I think the facilitation of that will really be key to maybe get scope and scale.
So in terms of next steps.
Yeah, so I just want to say this is great discussion and I've taken a lot of notes to kind of relay back to Lee and possibly Clark on how to facilitate this and what we're looking for. And I feel like what we're saying is that we want the community impact to extract those community expectations on that scope and scale.
And priority.
And prioritize as well. And then like things like labeling the maps and cheat sheets for what's different. And then eventually letting them know that the next step after this would be looking at the budgets and timelines of those renderings and what they decided on. Is that kind of what we're?
Yeah, so there's like this period of input where we get citizen engagement. And then I imagine, and so leading up to that, there's some work with DHM, certainly, hopefully Clark, we may want to think about like, if Clark says no, how does that work?
Yeah.
And then a period where DHM has a chance to kind of go back to the drawing board and potentially narrow down the ABC or the AB or whatever to something that's a meld of those ideas. There's some refinement to the renderings. And then maybe through the committee process, there's a way to sort of think about how community engagement happens after that.
Todd, did you have a follow-up comment?
I did, I wanted to state, we have done a lot of community engagement regarding Kendall over the last 5 years, 10 years, even longer. I think the goal here would be really to like touch in with the community. These initial renderings have been driven by adopted documents. So it's really just an opportunity to check in and say, hey, are we still going in the right direction? Do you guys still agree with this? I don't think we're going to see dramatic change from those documents and all those studies that we've done in the past. Or at least I would hope. And this would be the opportunity to say, hey, we used to want an ice rink, now we don't. Hey, we wanted cross-country skiing, now we don't. It's kind of just a touch in.
Yeah, great point.
And I totally hear you, Todd. I just like, how do we communicate different this time than we have in the past? So we don't have a bunch of misinformation again.
Again, maybe this, I keep coming back to these three terms, scope, scale, and priority. That if the community can answer the questions for themselves, then maybe we can avoid some of the angst. Because folks are worried about the scale, they were worried about the scope, and they weren't sure about different people have different opinions on the priority. And so like if we can get feedback on those three based on actual drawings of actual Pendle, maybe that helps. I don't know.
Yeah, I think some of the turmoil that we've had in the past is not relevant here because this is an actual rendering. This is conceptual, a visual concept of what we're talking about. So we'll be able to invite people to share their thoughts on an actual idea, an actual design, so that there isn't so much left up to the imagination.
But also like,
Which is good.
That's what we ran into before.
Because it's really.
Prior to our new board convening, we had several lengthy marathon meetings where, if they weren't passing out tar and feather at the entrance to the building, we wouldn't have left unscathed. No, I think this is a good thing. We need to get this out, more information, but to reopen old wounds, I am not all about that.
You think
Whatever.
this helps us get positively.
Well, this is what our neighbors and friends and community members have asked for.
Exactly. Like, I actually think that despite some of the turmoil we've experienced, we've also experienced a great amount of agreement and direction. And to Todd's point, the community has already engaged on the process. And so, in all likelihood, this is a really nice alignment of that process and those ideas. And now the difference is we have something for people to look at and imagine on a piece of paper and comment on.
Okay, so I have a new process written down here. And it sounds like community engagement focused on the scope, scale, and priority for the community. And then once that is done, then we go back to DHM and ask them to refine their renderings to reflect that scope and scale and prioritization. And then that can come back to the Facilities, Parks and Rec Committee for review. And after the Facilities, Parks and Rec Committee have reviewed that, then it would come to the board for consideration and possibly solicit more public comment.
Sounds right.
And if anybody doesn't like scope, scale, and priority, they can. Different terms.
We need to come up with a really nifty acronym.
I like 3 words.
And for anybody who's watching, those committee meetings are on YouTube. And really the purpose of that check-in of that future committee meeting is just to make sure that the committee agrees that DHM interpreted the community feedback accurately. It's not to,
Not just taking their own
idea. It's not just being like, oh, we still want this. It should be pretty smooth, and the most exciting moment will be seeing what the community provides to DHM, I think. Cool.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you all. And if you guys decide to work with Clark or work with DHM, I'd be happy to draft up that list of identified assets and like some ABCs to aid those groups if we think that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Awesome. The next item is 9B, continued business town hall open house capital improvement projects.
All right, so I've been wanting to talk about this all night. We will be hosting a town hall open house this Wednesday, September 14th at 6 p.m. There will be presentations on the state of the town, including celebrating our accomplishments, recognizing our challenges, and setting us up for the future. The format will be me giving a 30 to 45 minute presentation. I'm actually going to say it's a 45 to an hour presentation. I practiced it earlier. That will be in person and aired on YouTube and on Zoom. I just wanted to say that public comment will be limited to just in person because we're really trying to encourage people to show up and open our town hall to them again. And if online participants have questions, they'll be encouraged to email them directly to me. This night is also the kickoff for our citizens to prioritize the presented projects, which are in your board packet memo right now, to include in future capital improvements or called a CIP, so capital improvement program. Prioritizing these projects will be open for citizens in the atrium of Town Hall from September 14th through October 12th during business hours. These projects, as laid out in your agenda memo, were chosen because they are, one, already in existing plans, 2 are referred to in the draft master plan, and 3 aligned with the trustee priorities. There have been line items that have not been reported in previous budget for the amount of $25,000 for future capital outlay. I have not been able to find an associated resolution that have allocated these funds at some point in time. So this is our opportunity to make that resolution and actually allocate funds to that line item. And for the future, this will be reported in our budget. And so what I'm asking tonight is for you all to review the projects that are presented and to ensure that that is what we want the community to prioritize in the next 5 to 10 years. With this fund of 25,000, and then we can discuss afterwards on what our contribution would be for 2023. But that would probably be at a later meeting once we have these prioritizations.
And again, for us in the community to know, like, these funds, we can seek grant funding for them, like, depending on how these are prioritized. We can use these capital improvement funds for matching, for a variety of things to help execute the prioritized projects.
Correct.
And for the avoidance of any doubt, this town hall open house will be hosted here in town hall.
Yes, correct. In town hall, right up here.
Awesome.
You can spend some more time here.
It's my favorite building.
It's a really cool building.
Any questions, comments, further discussion? It's gonna be awesome. Everybody should come.
And then also that night, they'll be able to vote on the 4th of July fireworks up until the 26th, and they'll also be able to vote on yes or no on erecting a new cemetery fence. So this is to help out our
So excited.
our
to see what
cemetery
everyone
committee.
says.
Will I know that folks can come in and vote on the projects. And so you're saying they can also.
So they'll be prioritizing the project.
Yeah.
And then they can vote yes or no on the fireworks or the cemetery and the cemetery fence.
And that's past this night on Wednesday as well.
Correct.
It'll be open atrium, come on your lunch hour.
Yep.
Spend your Monopoly money. Yeah.
Yeah, so you will be given, citizens will be given $5, town bucks, we're calling them. And they'll be able to prioritize their projects, spending their town bucks.
Oh, that's so hard.
So just to be slightly pesky here, this is not to throw a wrench in anything at all. I just wondered if there's a structure, a Dropbox or something for, like, if someone just does not connect with any of these and they want to go rogue,
Right in.
a write-in.
Yes.
Or is that just not helpful feedback is really my question. I'm not suggesting
Yeah,
that's necessary.
Fourth on a write-in on it.
Uh-huh.
And so if that's something you guys would like me to incorporate, I can incorporate the write-in.
At this point, after discussion and thought, your conclusion is that you landed here.
Correct, yeah. Todd and I have been working on this for about a month now.
I think if there's a write-in topic that has significant community support, we're gonna hear about it either way.
But I'm happy to add a box if people want to.
No, I think if you landed here with thought and diligence, I do not want to get in the way of that.
I have a hard question, I think,
Okay.
which is, once we tally the town bucks, community bucks, what do we call
Town
them?
bucks.
The town bucks, and the yes or no votes on fireworks and cemetery fence. How exactly do we factor that in, assuming that nowhere close to the entirety of the community will be able to come to this or?
So this is a tool to help you all. So I don't expect to get every community member in here, but those that are interested in these projects might come in and give you all, this is a way to get feedback for your future decision-making. So it's not as though they are voting on something, they're helping prioritize. And so it's showing you all what they would like to see prioritized in their capital improvements in their future. And then you all can make that decision on how you want the resolution that will be defining what our capital improvements program, like the scope of it. That will give you that information to make better decisions, hopefully.
Right, and so the community knows this is not a voting, one of these wins, it's informational for the trustees.
Yeah, when we initially spoke about that, I thought that was someone going to be very clear on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're not going to have Bodie McBoatface, and we're definitely going to take them into consideration. And we'll be trying to extrapolate the information that we gather and make the best decision for the community. I like Bodie McBoat. I
did too. And then for the September 4th through October 12th, kind of open voting through town hall, is there some type of like control? Like if there was somebody who's like super gung ho about one thing, can they come in and vote every day? Or are we like?
No, so they have to ask the clerk for their town butts or the deputy clerk. So they have to come in and ask for their
You
town.
get one
You get one vote. Yeah.
One citizen, $5.
And that's being recorded. Who has come?
Yeah, and I think Matt and Melina, we kind of talked about that. Well, Melina and I talked about that. She will recognize if you're coming in twice. Yeah. That'll make a spreadsheet.
Like if all of a sudden Riverwalk gets more than 5 times the total number of people in town, we'll know that there was.
A little something.
Yeah, there's also just telling the number of people and knowing that they each had $5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask you, like, you know, helping folks understand that, you know, the town will still pursue and explore and investing in other things. Like someone might come and say, well, Blair Street improvements are not on here. And someone might say, well, Kendall improvements are not on here. But just recognizing there are other big projects in town that we are exploring and trying to get grants for.
Yeah, if we're not already in progress, like Blair Street, we're applying for 2 other grants for right now. So we didn't feel it was appropriate to put it on our long-term plan when it has already been identified as a short-term, like we need to do that in the short term.
Great. And I know in your 45-minute presentation, it's going to be thorough and.
1 hour.
Maybe an hour, but
An hour.
You should see my script.
Okie dokie.
All right.
Thank you for putting the time in this.
Yeah, this cool.
Yeah, people have to show up. That's all I ask.
You get to sit down? How does this work?
Well, no, I'm gonna be standing there and the screen's gonna be over here and we're gonna be presenting out there. Yeah,
Refreshments?
yeah, light
Light
refreshment.
refreshments, that's right. Light snacks.
Yep. Just to keep people awake.
That's right. I had like a 7th grade babysitter propose to me once, well, I can do light snacks. I can't do dinner, but I can prepare light snacks because I'm just in 7th grade. It was a great light snack. So we'll have light snack.
Okay. Anything else on this?
That's it.
Great. Next item on our agenda is 9C, continued business. Second reading for the adoption of ordinance 2022-09, an ordinance of the town of Silverton for limited rezoning and amending the official zoning map regarding property known as 124 East 9th Street, Silverton, Colorado.
All right, so this published the ordinance. This ordinance was published in the newspaper on October 25th for public comment tonight. I have not received any comments from the public regarding this ordinance. I did meet with Wayne and Melody to answer the applicants to answer any questions they had on limited rezoning. Actually, Clayton was a part of that as well. And they were comfortable with not being here tonight because they had their questions answered. And they're comfortable with this ordinance.
do we need to take public comment right now as well?
I asked, usually when I ask, it's during public comment, but you can ask definitely if anyone has any comments right now.
because I feel like we've gone over this pretty thoroughly.
Can make a motion.
I would like to make a motion about ordinance 2022-09, creating a business pedestrian limited overlay district for 124th East 9th Street and authorizing the execution of the limited use agreement.
Second.
A. Roll call, please.
Trustee Lacy.
Yes.
Trustee Kriner.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Behrman.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right. Continued business 9D, second reading for the adoption of ordinance 2022-10, an ordinance of the town of Silverton, Colorado, adopting by reference and enacting the 2015 editions, the International Building Code, International Residential Code, International Energy Conservation Code, International Mechanical Code, International Fuel Gas Code, International Fire Code, and the International Existing Building Code, and repealing all other ordinances or parts of laws in conflict therewith.
And this ordinance was published as well on August 25th, soliciting comment for tonight. I have not received any comments regarding this item. As a reminder, we have omitted the section that would require sprinkler systems in single-family houses as reflected on page 3 of the ordinance in section 18.2-20, clause 3.
I'll make a motion to adopt the ordinance 2022-10, an ordinance of the town of Silverton, Colorado, adopting by reference and enacting the 2015 editions of the International Building Code, International Residential Code, International Energy Conservation Code, International Mechanical Code, International Fuel Gas Code, International Fire Code, and the International Existing Building Code, and repealing all other ordinances or parts of laws in conflict therewith.
Second.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Kriner.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Behrman.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. We will now open up the meeting to, that was our last agenda item on this regular meeting. We'll now open up for public comment. We have any in-person comment that would go first? We do not. So we will go to our Zoom. Please click the raise hand button. We'll promote you to panelist. And once you introduce yourself, we'll start a 3-minute timer.
This is Melody. Can you hear me?
We can.
I have a lot of thoughts about tonight's meeting, but paying the firemen to do a lot of this work points out that someday we will be moving towards a paid fire department, just to point that out. The guys do a wonderful job, and the volunteers are getting older, and we're probably going to have to work that direction. Just keep it in mind. When it comes to the Kendall Mountain Recreation Area Master Plan process, you need to remember that Silverton is a revolving door community. Community engagement will be essential. A lot of new people have moved here in the last 5 years, and a lot of people have moved out more in the last 10 years. Because there's so many people that don't stay here very long. By the time you start many projects, more people will have moved out and in. Often accepted citizen input will help this process proceed. We want to know how much cost falls on the local taxpayers, and if we are involved in this process all along, then things won't backfire like it did last time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do not see any other public comment, so we will go ahead and close this public comment period. We do this evening have an executive session request. And so in order to do that, I guess I will first entertain a motion to enter executive session under CRS section 246402.4F with respect to a personal matter regarding performance reviews of town administrator Gloria Kochberger. If
moved.
if the committee would like to, if the trustees would like to so move, do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Kramer.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Barron.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yeah.
And Trustee Long.
Yes.
Mayor Herman.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, so now that we've had a motion passed to move to an executive session, what we're going to do is we're going to ask everybody on Zoom and in person to voluntarily leave the meeting so that we can have this closed meeting. Following the executive session, when we exit, we'll re-enter this public meeting. But the only purpose of re-entering the public meeting is to adjourn. That portion will be on YouTube, I believe, as well, once this is posted. And if anyone would like to tune back in, they can, but otherwise, have a good night, everybody. We'll now take a 3 to 5 minute break while we wait for people to exit the thing and to stretch our leg.
Feels like it's been a while since we've done this.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
David, could you please log off?
No, I'm tired.
Oh.
No, I got one of those bugs like in my eye.
I think
My Neil.
yes.
It's terrible. I mean, that question. Clayton, can you hear us?
He might have taken his. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I gotcha.
We're going to need to end the webinar real quick so you can remove the people who probably walked away from their computers. They're not considered meeting. That way we don't like permanently ban them from the meetings. So just gonna have to end and restart this.
All right, so everybody's I gotta leave.
Well, so what we'll do is we'll just end the meeting for all, and then you'll just need to dial back in like 30 seconds.
That way it's the participants, not bans.
Okay, clock's ticking.